The purpose of this short video is to give you a quick overall look at how to operate the Rotunda Fuel Injector Tester Cleaner, and also to provide you with some tips on how using the tester cleaner can make your job easier. Testing and cleaning fuel injectors has become an important part of engine service and maintenance, and it can be very time-consuming. Just pulling the injectors and reinstalling them involves a lot of labor, and that doesn't include the actual cleaning or testing operations. A reliable system that can cut out some of that labor is a real advantage for you. That's where the Rotunda Tester Cleaner comes in. It's designed to let you clean and test, or just test, fuel injectors, all without ever removing them from the engine. The whole procedure is really pretty simple and can usually be done in as little as 15 minutes. Once you become familiar with the operation of the unit, you'll find that you'll not only be better at servicing fuel injectors, you'll be faster too. The tester cleaner is so efficient because during the cleaning process, the fuel rail is totally isolated from the rest of the fuel system, so the cleaning solution is circulated only through the rail and the cleaning unit. The concentrated solution cleans fast and efficiently because you're only cleaning what you want to clean. And since all the work is done right on the fuel rail, your job becomes simpler and the results are more accurate. You can think of it as bypass surgery for the fuel system. Before we begin, it's important to note you are not qualified to use the Rotunda Fuel Injector Tester Cleaner unless you're familiar with the service and repair procedures for automotive fuel injection systems and you know the proper use of the special tools required for those procedures. For example, you'll need to use 2 spring lock couplers and a fuel line quick disconnect. And of course, you must follow all safety procedures listed in your shop manual whenever you work with fuel. Now let's take a look at the components of the Fuel Injector Tester Cleaner. The unit has its own pump, regulator, reservoir, and control box. On the front, there's the fuel tank, the pressure gauge, the power supply line, and the on-off 10-minute timer switch. There's also a continuous fuel injector switch that you won't use because it doesn't apply to current Ford fuel injection systems. On the upper part of the back, you will find the flow meters, the injector test switch, the purge switch, which is used only for the bench test, the injector selector switch, the flow meter selection valve, and the test harness connection. On the lower part of the back are the manual shutoff valve, the fuel regulator, and the fuel supply outlet. The unit comes with all the accessories you'll need to service any Ford, Lincoln, or Mercury engine. The accessories you'll use to test or clean will depend on which engine you're servicing. You'll use this turnbuckle to keep the engine at the correct idle. There are 2 tester injector harnesses, the push type and the 10-pin connector. While you can test any Ford Motor Company engine by using one of these 2 accessories, other special application harnesses are now available from Rotunda that will help you test some engines even faster. This is the bench test fixture and an illustration of how the injector fits into it. Before you begin testing, it's important to check the calibration of the flow meters. If the permanent calibration decals included in the calibration kit aren't already installed on the flow meters, you must install them following the instructions in the kit before you can check the calibration. About once a month, or more often if the unit gets heavy use, put denatured alcohol in the fuel tank and run it through so any dirt is removed. Then pump the alcohol out and flush the unit with clean filtered gasoline. It's a good idea to change the fuel filter inside the tester when you clean it. Then to calibrate the flow meters, just follow the calibration instructions. Remember, a clean tester is the key to accurate diagnostics. The ball inside the flow meter should be centered on the decal calibration line on the span tube. Check it using the calibration injector installed in the bench fixture. There is a separate calibration injector for each flow meter. Use the number 1 harness to connect the injector. The injector selector switch should be in the number 1 position. If the float ball is off the calibration line, the span tube has to be adjusted. You do that by inserting a small screwdriver into the holes at the top of each flow meter and making an adjustment. the span tube will move up or down. Move the tube scale so the calibration line is centered on the float ball. This will raise or lower the span tube scale to set the correct calibration. Also check the tester's fuel pressure to be sure it's at 40 psi. The fuel pressure is set at the factory, but it may need to be adjusted. To adjust the fuel pressure, turn the shutoff valve to the open or on position. Then remove the black regulator cap and back off the lock nut. Turn the screw until you get the proper setting. Retighten the lock nut, replace the cap, and turn the unit off. Calibration doesn't have any effect on the cleaning operation, but it must be accurate when you're testing injectors. A quick calibration check before testing can easily be done in a minute. This video will cover all three basic procedures: testing, cleaning, and bench testing. We'll start with testing, since it always makes sense to test first, because if your test shows that all the injectors are functioning properly, then the problem is somewhere else, and there's no need to continue with the cleaning procedure. So, testing saves a lot of time. Then if cleaning is necessary, you do it with the injectors in place. So again, you save time and effort. Now let's look at fuel injector testing. The first step in the testing procedure is to make sure the manual shutoff valve is in the off position. Then you fill the tester fuel tank with clean filtered gas. It's important to remember here that you don't add cleaner solvent for testing. To start the testing procedure, connect the power supply line to the car battery. The flashing red light tells you the connection has been made and the unit is off. Before you disconnect the engine fuel line, you must bleed the pressure out of the system. Refer to your shop manual for the correct procedure. Once that's done, disconnect the engine fuel inlet connection at the fuel rail and connect the supply hose from the testing equipment to the fuel inlet connection. It's a spring lock and it should click together as a little on connections. The next step is to disconnect the engine fuel return connection at the fuel rail from the fuel return. Plug the return line and install the appropriate U-tube between the chassis supply line and the chassis return line. Keep some rags handy to catch spills, since you're bound to drip some gasoline in this process. Now, turn on the 10-minute timer switch. Before you go any further, it's very important to follow these safety precautions. Be sure the car is in park or neutral and the parking brake is on, or the front and rear wheels are blocked. Then, start the engine and check for leaks at any of the test equipment connections. With the engine running at idle, switch the flow selector from position 1 to position 2 3 or 4 times to purge air from the system. Then turn the engine off, but don't turn the tester off. The next step is to select the proper flow range. The colors of injectors may vary slightly among manufacturers, but basically if the injector cap is blue, gray, or yellow, use flow meter number 1. If it is white, black, green, or brown, use flow meter number 2. Verify the proper flow range by checking the EFI application chart in the back of the tester manual. Now you connect the appropriate test injector harness and test each injector. If the timer shuts down, restart it before doing the testing. You turn the injector selector switch to each injector number in turn while you push the fuel injector test button. You can tell if the injectors are clean if you observe where the ball stops rising in the flow meter as you check each one. Be sure to read the scale at eye level. If it's within the color code range, then it's good. If you remove an injector that tests unsatisfactory, you should bench test it to confirm your diagnosis. The testing procedure will lead you to one of two conclusions. First, if the readings are high or low, that is, above or below the plus-minus range, the injectors should be cleaned. That's simple enough. We'll go over that procedure next. Second, if the readings are all high, You may have one or more leaky injectors. The tester manual has instructions on how to check for the leak. Remember, you can test the injectors either before or after you clean them, but testing first will save you the trouble of unnecessary cleaning if the injectors are within specifications. Now let's look at the fuel injector cleaning procedure. The first step in cleaning is to turn the manual shutoff valve to the on position. Again, use clean filtered gas and fill to the appropriate line for the injection system you're cleaning. Add injector cleaner from the lower fill line to the upper fill line. This should be about 7 ounces. The simple solvent-to-gas formula is approximately 1 ounce of cleaner solvent to 7 ounces of unleaded gas per cylinder. Now you connect the power supply line to the car battery. The flashing red light will tell you the connection has been made and the power is off. Next, disconnect the engine fuel inlet line at the fuel supply rail. Connect the supply hose from the cleaning equipment to the fuel inlet. Now disconnect the engine return line at the fuel supply rail and plug the return line. Then install the U-tube between the chassis supply line and the chassis return line. Before you start the engine for the cleaning process, install the turnbuckle to control the idle speed. Then turn on the 10-minute timer switch. Follow the same safety procedures when you prepare the car for cleaning as you did for testing. Cleaning takes place most efficiently at around 2,000 RPM, so adjust the turnbuckle to stabilize the idle speed. Now let the rest of the 10-minute cycle run. Then turn off the ignition and remove the turnbuckle. Disconnect the cleaner supply hose from the fuel supply rail connection inlet. Never leave cleaning mixture in the tank when you're through using it, because it will corrode internal parts of the unit. Always drain the unit and dispose of the remaining mixture safely and flush the system with clean gasoline. Remember that keeping the tester clean and calibrated is the key to doing a quality job. Finally, turn the power switch off and disconnect the power supply. Reinstall the car's fuel lines. Start the engine and check for any leaks at connection points. The last procedure we're going to look at is bench testing a fuel injector. This is the way you can check individual injector performance and leakage. First, make sure that the manual shutoff valve on the back of the unit is turned on. Put several ounces of clean gas in the unit fuel tank. Next, connect the fuel supply hose to the fuel supply outlet and to the bench fixture. Connect the power leads. Insert the calibration injector into the bench fixture. Connect the number 1 harness and turn the injector selector switch to the number 1 position. Now run a quick check. Adjust the calibration if you have to. Next, insert the injector you want to test into the bench fixture. Connect the number 1 harness and direct the injector nozzle into the tester unit fuel tank. Now, turn on the 10-minute timer switch and check for leaks. At the same time, press both the injector test switch and the purge switch. Hold for about 30 seconds. This eliminates air from both the supply hose and the injector. You shouldn't see any leaks from the injector nozzle tip. If you do, then replace that injector. To test the injector, press the injector test switch and observe the float level in the flow meter. Remember to always shut off the timer when you're either installing or removing an injector in the bench fixture. Finally, certain conditions will cause false flow readings. To avoid them, make sure the tester is clean and calibrated, the engine is cool, all air bubbles are eliminated from the system fuel lines, the fuel pressure is 39 to 40 psi for high-pressure EFI vehicles, and the power source is adequate. So basically, that's how easy it is to hook up and use the Rotunda Fuel Injector Tester Cleaner. If used properly, it can save you time in doing complaint repairs by helping you find the problem quickly and correcting it the first time. If you have any questions about specific procedures or fine-tuning, refer to the manual supplied with the unit.